How's it going, my wolves, my bones? SilverDFanng, your favorite neighborhood wolf, with more YouTube reactions. We got Cam Sandwich, the anti-monopoly debacle. I had to read that. I forgot. So, long video, but honestly, there's so much. If you're into history, board games, American stupidity, law bullshit, it has it all. It is insane. It is intense, and you just got to see it to believe it. Enjoy. Okay, I kind of want to learn about this. Okay, Cam Sandwich, the anti-monopoly debacle.
Dude, you ever nearly bankrupt a multi-million-dollar corporation
No.
on accident?
No.
You ever make a board game that makes somebody so mad that the
No.
Supreme Court nearly gets involved?
No.
You ever have someone walk up to you with life-changing money and just
Yes!
tell them to F
Oh, wait.
off?
Oh, wait. No. Sorry. That didn't happen.
Well, I've got one guy that managed to do all three of those things in less than a decade.
Jesus.
Ralph Onspach, creator of the hit 1973 classic Anti-Monopoly.
Wait, what?
Anti-Monopoly is the subject of one of the craziest sagas in
I've
the
never
history
heard-
of the genre.
I've never heard of anti-monopoly. This is kind of fun.
As this simple bust the trust game has been embroiled in immense controversy, untold amounts of confusion, and multiple lawsuits that had the potential to completely unravel the entire board game market.
Wait, what?
This thing in my hands? Apparently one of the most important games ever published, and most of us have never even heard of it. So
True.
what I'm going to do here is try to learn you a little bit about what this thing is and what it did.
Thank you.
Including all of the whack crap that stemmed from its many courtroom appearances.
Whoa. Why is the General Mills logo? Why is General Mills involved in anti-monopoly? Jesus.
Like how it almost killed the entire Monopoly brand. Remember the Breaky courtroom drama? When they almost hired the Backstreet Boys to make a song about these things? This stuff is in a whole other league. But before we can figure out why this game caused so much trouble, we first need to know what the game even is. So let's dive barefoot and blindfolded into an absolute mess by taking a look at one of the most destructive board games in history, Anti-Monopoly. Anti-Monopoly.
First of all, I love the title. Anything that's anti-monopoly, I'm in here. Communism game, yay!
He is the 1973 title that sees players take up the roles of trust-busting lawyers who are attempting to break up the oligopolies, trusts, and monopolies that are holding the market hostage. You do this by moving around the board and purchasing indictments on the companies you land on, successfully busting a trust when you can manage to fill all of the indictment slots on a group. Social credit points are awarded for these and other actions, and the one with the most at the end wins both for themselves and for the economy. Okay, so first impressions with this one. Does this remind anybody of any other games in particular?
It is straight up Monopoly. It is straight up Monopoly, but this one is about anti-capitalism, so I love it.
Oh my gosh, they totally ripped off Connect 4! Yeah, upon first viewing, the Monopoly comparisons will start flying immediately, not helped by the fact that Monopoly is 60% of the game's title. However, there are several key distinguishing features here that would help separate the two in a purely hypothetical lawsuit. None of the spaces share the same names,
Correct.
the gameplay and win conditions are all completely different,
Correct.
the designs of all the components separate themselves very well.
Correct.
This could very easily be another late-for-the-sky Dashopoly title and not find any legal trouble at all. Now, in terms of a Dash Monopoly title, we'll have to see how that goes later. Back to the game though, it does a very good job at looking at the problems of regular Monopoly and trying its best to avoid them. For example, you won't have to worry about one guy hoarding one property of each color, as once you have two indictments on one group, you get assigned to that case. So no one else can try to take it from you, and if you complete it, then they'll need to pay you supervisory payments
Already makes it so much quicker. I love it.
to keep an eye on those dastardly monopolies. Oh, you can trust me, buddy. These Google guys, they're not going anywhere. What's funny about this game is that you are all trying to work together to break up as many trusts as possible, but you are still trying to be the #1 buster as well. Each player has their own budget.
I mean, in the words of a great musician, busting makes me feel good.
Their own cases, and can take out their own loans to help out. And once the first player runs out of money, you see who has the most points to determine the winner. Alright, good job everybody. We did only manage to break up the Auntie Anne's Pretzelopoly before Steven bankrupted himself, but that means that Kevin officially gets the gold star sticker. We'll meet up again next year. Of course, any self-respecting game could always use a little chaos, which is where the mailbox cards come in, causing effects that can help or harm your mission, such as your testimony inspiring a tightening of antitrust laws, political pressure ruining all your hard work, the Supreme Court ruling for or against your interests, one of your key witnesses fleeing the country altogether.
God damn it, every time someone flees to Barbados, god damn it, every time.
Together, getting invited to address the Commonwealth Club, which
This might be the most British thing I've seen. The Commonwealth Club? Dude.
believe doesn't do anything?
No.
A monopolistic businessman getting appointed to the head of the antitrust division, you getting caught bugging the office of a fellow agent, or you receiving one of several
Commonwealth
accolades,
Club.
like winning Trust Buster of the Year, making
Incoming ad break.
Oh, it does exist? What did they do, Blue?
this year's Who's Who in Washington, or even getting promoted, all of which do absolutely nothing.
Wow, it really is breaking down monopolies. You try your best, and they still find a way to make money. Damn. This game is woke.
Keep up the good work, sport. Overall, a pretty easy, simple game that helps you learn the bare essentials of the antitrust process if you haven't the slightest clue what any of that is, with it also being admittedly pretty funny sometimes. But as this thing hit store shelves and subsequently started flying off of them, there was one group that was absolutely not laughing.
Shocker. The monopolizing board game company doesn't like it when the monopolies are being monopolized by other monopoly people.
Not laughing at all. So let's go now into super special awesome story time and see what led Parker Brothers to almost implode their entire gosh dang business. The year, December. Time, 1973. Ralph Onspach, econ professor at San Francisco State, publishes Anti-Monopoly to a decent opening.
I love the era where board games were just a way to teach kids things that we shouldn't learn. Nowadays, it's just, propaganda.
Selling approximately 419,000 copies
Nice.
and bringing in nearly $1 million in revenue.
Which is funny for the game about, anti-monopolies, but whatever.
This is what we in the business call a lot of freaking money.
True.
Not one to enjoy the sight of somebody having a good time, the Parker brothers saw the increasing popularity of anti-monopoly and said, hey, wait a minute, we're regular Monopoly, and promptly sent Professor Onspach a cease and desist letter telling him to stop producing the game, destroy any current copies that he has, change any future titles so that they focus more on the trust-busting action, and allegedly run an ad in the newspaper apologizing.
Okay, fuck you, Parker Brothers. This just feels like people who've never worked a day in their life and just gotten lucky and had nepo wealth, and it's like, hey, that sounds like something we do. Stop doing it. Burn everything, and we will not talk about it. It will not exist in history. Also, kiss our feet and smack our ass.
For all the trouble? I would not put this past a legal team to request, but I say allegedly here as we'll find out later that our good buddy Ralph is already leaving out some key info.
Oh, so Ralph is also kind of a grifter. Great.
Professor Ansbach, upon receiving a legal threat from a massive corporation with a full-fledged legal department behind them, decides that the only reasonable course of action is to, of course, go to court and sue them first. That's a bold...
Okay, that's not what I was thinking. A lot of cases where the people think they're smarter than they are tend to, like, in these cases, be their own lawyer. I thought you might do that.
Strategy, Cameron. Let's see how that plays out for him. With this move, the professor has now locked himself in a legal duel. His dinky team of 2 lawyers against the entire legal might of the General Mills Fund Group, who owned Parker Brothers at the time.
General Mills owned Parker Brothers? Fuck. It's ironic that the company that made Monopoly is also a monopoly. Like, God, fucking American business, American capitalism, the more I learn, the more disgusting I think it is.
This kicked off a nearly 10-year-long brawl between the...
Blue, they just said it. They were owned by General Mills. They are a monopoly at that point.
That included about every twist that you could possibly imagine until they just ran out of courtrooms entirely. And it's my job now to try to relay this nonsense to you in a way that is comprehensible at all. A tall task when I just spent 4 hours looking through the appeals. So to start us off on this crazy train, let's begin with the very first lawsuit on offer. Anti-Monopoly Inc. versus General Mills Fund Group, Northern District Court of California. Now, this is by far the most complicated story ever covered on here. In addition to most of the information coming in the form of legal documents, there are a ton of contrasting accounts all over the internet as to who did what when and what actually even happened.
Great.
So what I'm going to do here is present the timeline of information in the order that events were given to the courts.
Okay.
With the info provided by the court documents being what I'm going with as my best source, since they were the ones used to make the decisions.
That makes sense.
As an example of what I'm dealing with here, there is a documentary by PBS about this time period and Monopoly's history.
That's cool.
And just by reading the documents of the case that they are talking about, they have gotten multiple things wrong. So
PBS, you can't do that. You're PBS. You gotta be the ones that, do the work.
with that, let's finally start this nonsense off. Plaintiff, Anti-Monopoly Inc. claims that the entire Monopoly trademark is completely invalid based on two factors. It was either never valid to begin with, or has since become generic enough to void the trademark altogether.
It's not bad.
So basically, they sent this man a cease and desist letter, and his first reaction was to try to completely destroy the Monopoly brand. Defendant, General Mills Fund Group, claims that the Monopoly trademark is, in fact, valid and enforceable. Real shocker there. And that anti-monopoly is in violation of that.
Oh, look, I'm just going to say, no, the word monopoly is in the English language. General Mills, Parker Brothers should not have trademark rights to the word monopoly.
Trademark. Now, you may be wondering how in the heck the professor here is going to try to argue that Monopoly's trademark is invalid when it's been perfectly fine for the last 40-odd years. Well, he undertook quite the feat to try to make this happen, as his goal was to prove that the story that Parker Brothers had been selling America on the origin of Monopoly had been, in fact, a lie. Originally, the story of Monopoly started from Charles Darrow. A man down on his luck after the Great Depression comes up with a revolutionary idea for a board game about buying and selling properties. He pitches the idea to a struggling Parker Brothers, it becomes a massive hit, zippity-doo-dah, everyone's rich. Now, this story is all well and good, but as the professor began to look around, he noticed some inconsistencies. Mainly that in October 1933, Darrow got the copyright for the game before Parker Brothers received both the rights and a trademark for Monopoly in 1935.
Interesting.
Well, during his search, he began to find an increasing number of reports of people who played a real estate property trading game as early as the 1920s.
Interesting.
These games going by various names in different parts of the country, like inflation, business, finance, and in multiple cases, Monopoly.
Wait, what? I didn't know this. I didn't know there was a Monopoly before Monopoly. Am I shocked that a big company threw their money and kind of got rid of all of the competition? No, but I didn't know it exists.
They are describing here is what the documentary calls a folk game, a game that is created and spread around an area due to people just making it up and telling others about it rather than a company creating and selling it. Examples of which being games like chess or tic-tac-toe. Well, this presented the professor with an interesting angle, as if he could prove that Darrow had simply commandeered an already established game, then he might be able to get Parker Brothers' entire trademark revoked.
Honestly, it's not a bad idea.
Where this is going from here? I wish it was that simple. The professor eventually gets into contact with a Charles Todd who knew Darrow. And he recounts that after inviting him over to play a game called Monopoly, Darrow liked it so much that he asked him if he could borrow the rules and the board. And later that year, a copyright for Monopoly in Darrow's name is suddenly established. Now, this wouldn't automatically win him the case. Regardless of whether or not Darrow stole the idea, this angle hinges on Monopoly being a widespread established game to get the trademark overturned. But to Parker Brothers, this is regardless a massive problem.
Oh, God,
what has just transpired in the last couple years is that they sent a cease and desist letter to shut down another game with Monopoly in the title, entered a legal battle that they couldn't control because Ralph sued first, and that guy they sent the letter to is now bringing people and evidence that proves the story they had been selling Monopoly on for the last 40 years was a complete lie.
No one in legal or in the high quarters or none of them fought to look into this. Just a random dude brought a game in. They're like, cool. God damn it, Parker Brothers.
Which, even if they won the suit, would become public information if this trial went through. So the totally not panicking, why do you ask, members of the Parker Brothers decide to try and curb this little mishap before things just get a bit out of hand. Hey, Ralph, buddy, pal, friend. Look, I know we've both said and done some things that we might regret, and the court costs are really starting to add up, what with all the preparation and lawyers and junk. So we've got a solution that we think would help both sides. We really like the game you made. Great game, by the way. Really gets the message across. In fact, we like it so much that we are willing to buy...
I just love the look of a man that knows he has a multi-millionaire company by its gonads. It's always great.
Buy the rights to it so that it can be sold all over the country. We will give you $500,000 for the rights to anti-monopoly.
In the 70s, that's a lot.
We will also give you an executive-level position at Parker Brothers so that we can just put all of this behind us and you can keep making more great games. What do you say? Nah. Okay. Sounds good. Hey, how did the settlement offer go? We are dead! And so the trial begins.
I'm not gonna lie, this does feel like a man's ego, because the truth of it is, he should have took the deal. That is very lucrative, and he would have been set for life. And I have a feeling we're probably going to get where he missed some information, and it's going to cost him everything.
Got quite a battle for you today, ladies and gentlemen, with round one ready to start. First up, was Monopoly a generic term to describe real estate trading board games prior to the trademark? If so, the trademark is invalid. After the court spends, I kid you not, 6 consecutive paragraphs talking about wheat, the court eventually agreed that small groups of related people had played Monopoly in various parts of the country prior to Parker Brothers registering the trademark.
Suck it, PB.
However, the court concluded that this was insufficient to prove that the term was the common descriptive name of all real estate trading games.
That's okay. Okay, but enough people have called it by that game and using the same format.
Basically saying that while the name Monopoly was thrown around here or there, similar games were also floating around going by different names like finance or inflation, which was true.
But they weren't set up like Monopoly before Parker Brothers made Monopoly. That one does look like a one-for-one.
Don't believe me? Look up Mr. Monopoly Inflation and see for yourself. As a result, the court ruled that monopoly was not a generic term prior to the trademark.
I think that's
so this
BS.
round goes to Sergeant General Mills. Round 2. Has monopoly become a generic name since the trademark registration? What the court is trying to determine here is if the term monopoly now refers to all real estate trading board games and not an individual game emanating from a single source. This would be a load of barnacles.
Yeah.
What they are trying to see here is if it has just become common practice to refer to any real estate trading game as Monopoly. Not a Monopoly ripoff, not a Monopoly-like, not a Trump version of Monopoly.
Boo!
You would just call both of these games Monopoly, and that's it. This has happened with other products before, like Trampoline or Videotape, but this is absolutely not the case with Monopoly.
True.
As all of these real estate trading games cannot just be called Monopoly without massive confusion. If you invite me over for a game of Monopoly and you pull out Joel Harden's Mogul, I am going to cause quite the kerfuffle.
There's also, like, a more popular one is Payday. Payday is very much like Monopoly, but it is its own thing, and people would just call Payday.
The court also agreed with this sentiment, ruling that Monopoly had not become a generic name since its registration, awarding Round 2 also to Major General Mills. Round 3. Is anti-monopoly in violation of Parker Brothers' trademark
don't think it
on
is.
Monopoly? Yes, of course it is.
What?
Now, I am not a lawyer, so I don't know all of the intricacies of trademark law, but my guy, look at this.
Yes, it looks similar. Okay, there might be elements that he could change, but like no.
Nice to meet you.
No,
I'm Doff.
I think there's enough of a difference, but honestly, there is way too much for it to not feel connected.
So, Round 3 also goes to Private General Mills, awarding them the 3-0 supermarket sweep and figuratively killing anti-monopoly. As a result of this lawsuit, Professor Onspach had to turn over all remaining copies of Anti-Monopoly to Parker Brothers, which they would treat with care and respect by literally killing Anti-Monopoly, trashing all 40,000 copies of the game that were given to them, and inviting journalists out to watch them bury the games in a land.
I hate this.
Landfill as some sort of show of force.
Peasants, this is what happens when you try to fight the Parker Brothers. We come to our execution for someone who thought they could be better than us.
Dug a mass board game grave and invited people out to take pictures like, haha.
This was the 1970s version of an execution.
Celebrating my big win. Coming to the conclusion that, well, we can't possibly do any worse, the professor's team appealed, bringing us to Anti-Monopoly Inc. versus General Mills Fun Group, The Appeal, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Alright, we're back and we've got some issues with the last case. First, we're appealing the court's decision that the Monopoly trademark is valid. Okay, in terms of originally valid or since it was trademarked? Both. We're also appealing the court's decision that anti-monopoly is in violation of that trademark. So you don't think the trademark's valid, but if it is, then you aren't in violation of it anyway?
That's bad.
Yeah. Why didn't you go for that the first time then? Buddy, we're at the appeals court. I'm just taking swings here. The appeals court process is attempting to look over what was done in the original trial and see if everything was conducted properly. If not, then they may have to do a whole other trial to make sure that the process is done right.
U.S. court system.
No new information was added, everything was in line with the previous ruling. Yeah, this one still stands. Give us a little more time on that one. What? No.
Yeah, that one's a weird one. What is a jury gonna do for you?
Wait a minute. Aw, they biffed it! In the first trial, the court decided that monopoly was not a generic term for all real estate trading games, and therefore is not generic. But this is not what they should have been looking for. The appeals court states that what they should have been evaluating, based on what anti-monopoly was trying to convey, was whether or not monopoly constituted its own genius.
Thank you. That's what I'm talking about. Yes. Is monopoly, like, the NO world. No, but Monopoly should not have been trademarked. It is already he'll say it.
Okay, this one is tough, so bear with me here. They are saying, to the absolute best of my understanding, that the relevant product category is not all real estate trading games, but the game played by the rules of Monopoly. So, Monopoly. In order to decide the case properly, the first court needed to differentiate the meanings a particular and very popular board game and a game produced by a single company. To quote the judge's very easy-to-follow example, it may be that when a customer enters a game store and asks for Monopoly, he means, I would like Parker Brothers' version of a real estate trading game because I like Parker Brothers products. On the other hand, the customer may mean, I want a Monopoly game. Don't bother showing me anti-Monopoly or easy money or backgammon. I am interested in playing the game of Monopoly. I don't much care who makes it. The proper mode of analysis is to decide but one question, whether the primary significance of a term is to denote product or source. In making this determination, the correct genus-species distinction, that is, the correct genericness finding follows automatically.
What that judge said, I agree.
And that finding is? Well, I'm not going to tell you. You figure it out. After spending all this time prattling on about how easy it would be to correctly find the answer to the generic question, the judge does not give an answer to the question, reverses the previous court's decision, and tells them that they're going to hold another trial in a few years, so you might want to go see if there's any more evidence out there. So, not only has the appeals court match ended in a complete stalemate, but I honestly could not even tell you what they are even looking for to determine the winner anymore.
So, they're trying to figure out, from the best of my knowledge, I could be wrong, they're trying to figure out if someone went into a board game shop and they asked for Monopoly, if they would be like, if the person working there and the person would both have the picture of Parker Brothers Monopoly. Because if they don't, I don't know.
My guy went up to his honorable judge bench and said, well, we don't know if when someone buys something, they're thinking, I like this product or I like this company, and that's gotta count for something. Go ahead and think on that for
But what is that something?
about 2 years. So they sent these two schmucks on their merry way, and in 1981, they're back at the district court with some new stuff to hopefully close this one out for good. It's time for Anti-Monopoly Inc. versus General Mills Fun Group, the rematch.
How dare that judge make them think?
Court of California. In our third gosh dang matchup between these goobers, we are looking to primarily establish two things. One, is the Monopoly trademark still valid? And two, if it is Anti-Monopoly in violation of it? Each side has brought some new evidence in to help out their case, so let's take a look. The Landlord's game is name-dropped in the document, so at this point we know that the history is the Landlord's game was made, it spun off into all these little versions of real estate games across the country, and then those eventually led to Monopoly. It has been discovered that the Professor's game was not always called Anti-Monopoly, but was originally called Bust the Trust. After the game failed to take off, Ralph changed the name to Anti-Monopoly.
Oh, you fucking dumbass. So what this means is Ralph knew what he was doing. He named his game Anti-Monopoly to pretty much either confuse customers or use the name Monopoly as a jump point.
And lo and behold, including the visage of an extremely popular product can really help yours get some traction in the market. This little detail was surprisingly omitted in the documentary.
Yep.
No new evidence has been provided for the trademark infringement portion, so both sides have pretty much agreed that if there is a trademark, this thing is not allowed. And surveys were put together by both sides in order to get a glimpse into the mind of the American consumer. Here's what they found.
Again, I called it. This arrogant motherfucker. He knew that he was in the wrong, but he thought that he was smarter than everyone around him. God damn this fucking idiot.
It is determined that the professor's survey not only does a bad job at finding the right information, but it is pointed out that the survey is trying to skew the results in their favor by asking leading questions. It even fails at doing this right, as 1 out of 3 people who bought Monopoly said they did so mainly because they liked Parker Brothers products. The Parker survey is much less controversial, with it finding that 63% of people could correctly identify Monopoly as a brand name, and that 55% of people could correctly identify Parker Brothers as the maker of the game. That seems like a low number, but more than half is a pretty solid score.
Good enough.
If you went up to random people on the street and asked them, hey, who makes Oreos? Do you think more than half of them would get it? Do you?
I think it's Christie. I think the Christie company makes Oreos.
Even know who makes Oreos? That's pretty much all the new evidence, so let's see what the courts are thinking this time. Is this gosh dang trademark still valid or not? 1. Generic before it was made. While it is confirmed that Monopoly was played prior to the patent, there is not enough evidence to show that Monopoly was played widely enough to constitute the status as
Yeah, I know,
generic.
right, Blue?
This combined with the fact that Darrow and Parker Brothers popularized their own original version of the game, the trademark was made properly. Slimily, yes, but not illegally. This has been the case pretty much since the beginning, so let's go to the problem child that can't quite seem to make up its mind. 2. Generic since it was made. This court is required by the appeal court to try to find that super easy answer to the genericness question that the last judge totally knew, but he wants to hear your answer first just to make sure that you know too. The new judge is very excited about this project, as you can tell from the tone of several of his quotes in the document. One fact which this court need not ignore is that most consumers, indeed an overwhelming proportion thereof, purchase any given product not out of goodwill or affection for the producer, but because they want or favor the product.
True.
Only a shareholder of the General Mills Fund Group could reasonably be expected to purchase a Parker Brothers game out of an affection or goodwill for the corporation.
True.
Accordingly,
I like this judge. This judge is saying what we're saying, but smart.
the Ninth Circuit's mandate that this court divine the primary significance of monopoly in the consumer's mind must necessarily involve subtle inferences into the complex, convoluted mind of the American consumer, an unenviable task. Unless the Ninth Circuit standard is meant to foreclose
Incoming
the
ad break.
possibility of trademark protection for any producer of a unique game whose corporate name does not appear in the title of the game, example, Scrabble, then its test cannot
Dude, I love a good game of Scrabble. I know that's not the point, but God, I love Scrabble.
be used here to thwart Monopoly's trademark rights. Ladies and gentlemen, Judge Spencer Williams, District Court of Fed Up With Your Crap.
Amen.
Coming as no surprise after that spiel, Monopoly is determined to primarily denote Parker Brothers, and the trademark is upheld yet again. So with the third court case in a row still not siding with the professor, there really is only one thing we can do from here. That's right, it's time to launch another appeal! My guy, there are only so many appeals before you hit the Supreme Court and can't go any further. Welcome one and all to Anti-Monopoly Inc. versus General Mills Fund Group, the rematch, the appeal, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. What we're looking for this time is what we were looking for in all the other ones. Is the trademark valid? We've got a different judge for this appeal than the last one, so let's hope that this guy doesn't also speak in riddles, and we've also got a little more information that could be relevant to the case. We have...
Look, if you're a judge in appeals court, I feel like sometimes you just want to have fun. I feel like that judge just wanted to enjoy himself.
finally properly nailed down the monopoly origin for good thanks to a letter from the president of Parker Brothers himself in 1957, which reads the following. So far as we know, the Landlord's game, invented by Mrs. Elizabeth Maggie Phillips of Washington, D.C., was the basic game for both finance and monopoly. Mrs. Phillips patented her game and we purchased her patent. Mr. Charles Darrow later made many improvements to the Landlord's game and called his game.
There we go. Boom. End of case. They own the rights to the thing that could have been the thing that break the patent. It's done.
Monopoly. He too secured a patent which he assigned to us. Because of the fact that we purchased all 3 games, it does not make very much difference to us who invented either one of the games.
True.
During that 1934-1935 time period, Parker Brothers did indeed purchase the rights to not only Monopoly, but also other games like it, such as the Landlord's game and Finance, in order to keep those games
We didn't need 10 years of bullshit. Boom, done.
from splitting the market share. With a now monopoly on monopoly, they would...
Which is gross on itself. Again, Parker Bros. Literally just bought the competition, which is a monopoly. Gross.
slowly phase out the other titles until only Monopoly remained, allowing it to dominate store shelves. They were likely going to do the same to Anti-Monopoly had Ralph accepted their first offer, as Mrs. Phillips' game was eventually forgotten for several decades after it was sold for around $12,000 in today's money. So with this
that's not enough.
The 4th court case about this, they've decided to re-examine every piece of relevant information to make sure that they get it right this time. And here's what they came up with. In terms of whether it was generic prior to the trademark, they have fully accepted the correct Monopoly timeline of Landlord's game to small groups to various titles to Monopoly. When a small number of people use a particular thing and call it by a particular name, one which is not a common descriptive term for the thing, a person may appropriate the name and register it as a trademark. The purpose of the doctrine that generic terms cannot be made trademarks is to prevent the appropriation of a term that is already in wide use among those who are potential purchasers of the thing that the term describes. We agree with the trial judge's conclusion that Monopoly had not become generic before Parker Brothers registered it as a trademark. That was the easy one. That one never changed throughout the whole of the proceedings. But now, we hit the wackest of crap. Part 2. Has Monopoly become generic since it was registered? Per the appeals court, in Anti-Monopoly 2, the district court also said this: unless the Ninth Circuit standard is meant to foreclose the possibility of trademark protection for any producer of a unique game whose corporate name does not appear in the title of the game, example, Scrabble, then its test cannot be used here to thwart Monopoly's trademark rights. Nothing, in our opinion, in Anti-Monopoly 1 even hints at the relevance of whether or not the corporate name of the producer of the game appears in the title of the game, and our opinion does not foreclose the possibility of trademark protection of the name of a game that does not embody the corporate name of its producer. But our opinion does squarely hold as follows. Even if only one producer, Parker Brothers, has ever made the Monopoly game so that the public necessarily associates the product with that particular producer, the trademark is invalid unless source identification is its primary significance. So, what they are saying here, to the best of my
Thank you, because I went cross-eyed. I'm not gonna lie.
understanding is that it is absolutely still possible to not include the name of the producer in the name of the game and have a trademark, so long as the name of the game makes sure to link it back to the producer. How the heck are you supposed to do that? So, per their own words, you don't need to include Joel Harden's in the Mogul title to hold a trademark. But you also can't just use Mogul because it's a common English word that doesn't relate back to the producer. That would be seen as generic.
Okay.
So you just need to find a way to relate Mogul back to the producer. Say, maybe by making the title Mogul Joel Harden. See, it's completely different. My honorable judge really got up in that chair and went, nothing we said shuts down the ability to have a name that doesn't mention the maker. And in the very next sentence, completely shuts down the ability to have a name that doesn't mention the maker. As we have seen, the district court relied in part upon the fact that General Mills and its predecessor have spent time, energy, and money in promoting and policing the use of the term monopoly. Even if 1/3 of the members of the public who purchased the game did so because they liked Parker Brothers products, that fact does not show that Monopoly is primarily source indicating. The
True.
very survey on which the district court placed emphasis by italicizing its results shows that 2/3 of the members of the public who purchased the game wanted Monopoly and did not care who made it.
True.
What they are proposing is that board games should work like prescription drugs, where you get a 20-year patent to sell your game, and then after that, anyone can make a generic copy of your title that they can also start selling. By their logic, Coup has another 7 years before I can just...
Yes, I own it. Blue just asked, did you know Monopoly had a Star Wars Clone Wars? Yeah, I own it. I actually own a bunch of Monopolies. I used to collect them as a kid.
release my hit new game Regime Change, and there's not a dang thing they can do about it. To us, the evidence overwhelmingly shows that they very successfully promoted the game of Monopoly. But in doing it, they so successfully promoted Monopoly as the name of the game that it became generic in the sense that we use that term in trademark law. What they are saying here is that since the word monopoly is a standard English word that is just used on the daily, that it should not be able to be trademarked like this in terms of the
Which is what I've been saying since the beginning!
title of a board game. Here is the following list of other games that would lose their trademark for using common English words based on their precedent. Risk, Battleship, Clue, Sorry, Careers, Pandemic, Talisman, Coup, Pit, Splendor, Masterpiece,
That's
Trouble,
a lot.
Wingspan,
That's a
Operation
lot.
Perfection, Mousetrap, and any other game where a common word is what makes up the title. Interestingly enough, I believe Twister might probably be fine here as the game has nothing to do with a tornado. Finally, we enter a whole new level when we reach what the appeals court describes as the most important information for their decision, the conducted surveys. Oh good, and they've inspired so much confidence in their decision-making thus far. First survey, the brand name survey. General Mills conducted a survey where they asked people whether they considered Monopoly to be a brand name or a common name. Brand name being something like Chevrolet, and common name being something like automobile. Okay, this could be interesting. This would get directly into the consumer's mind to see whether they see the title as generic or not. Let's see what the results say. Oh, sorry, we don't have the results.
What?
Because the appeals court said the results of this survey had no...
Oh my god. The law system is bullshit.
no relevance to the question in this case. No relevance? That's exactly what you were looking for! You told them to go out, locate the correct genericness finding, they ask people as to whether they see the game as generic, and when they come back you say, this isn't what I wanted, then why did you ask for it? Under the survey definition, Monopoly would have to be a brand name
Judge got bored. He just wanted to fuck with General Mills.
because it is made by only one company. Yeah, welcome to how a brand works. You telling me only Ford makes Ford cars? Why hasn't anyone else tried that? Second survey. Anti-monopoly survey this time. People were asked, are you familiar with business board games of the kind in which players buy, sell, mortgage, and trade city streets, utilities, and railroads, build houses, collect rents, and win by bankrupting all other players, or not? About 53% said that they were, and those people were then asked, if you were going to buy this kind of game, what would you ask for? That is, what would you tell the sales clerk that you wanted? About 80% of them said Monopoly. What the heck game were the other 20% thinking of? Okay, it's a board game, you buy properties, you buy railroads, you build houses, you can mortgage property.
Ticket to Ride!
You ever heard of this before? Oh yeah, dude, I love backgammon. The appeals court says that this works for the case, partially because they've got money on the anti-monopoly money line, and partially because we think that the results of this survey are compelling evidence of a proposition that is also dictated by common sense. An overwhelming portion of those who are familiar with the game would ask for it by the name Monopoly. Dude, they remembered the name of a product they enjoyed? Can't be having that. Third survey, the motivation survey. Remember the anti-monopoly survey that was thrown out of the last court due to the slight issue of it being overwhelmingly prone to errors of subjective grading?
Yes.
Yeah, they allowed that back in as evidence because... Fourth survey, the Tide survey. General Mills submits a survey from Tide, where people were asked if they primarily buy Tide because they like the Tide detergent or because they liked Procter & Gamble's products, with 68% saying that they bought it because they liked the detergent. You may have recognized that this question is almost exactly the same as the anti-monopoly survey that was just admitted, where they asked, did you buy Monopoly due to liking the product or because you like Parker Brothers products? The appeals court didn't think so, saying that the results in the Tide survey are of no relevance.
These judges are dumb.
To this case. Surely, they must have a dang good explanation for this one, because I'm about to call for an investigation. Quote, there were various respects in which the survey was different from the motivation survey used by anti-monopoly, but we shall not suddenly attach great importance to technical considerations.
What?
Oh, yeah.
The court system. Technical is most of what you do.
There are tons of reasons why this one is different than the other one, but we're just so busy that we couldn't possibly take the time to explain them. Just take our word for it, bro. They better be glad that a jury trial wasn't given. If we had fans in the stands for this, they'd be throwing beer bottles on the court like we're in gosh dang Cleveland. And after our honorable Judge Yapper finally wraps up his spree, we are finally able to hear the final verdict. We hold that finding 2 is clearly erroneous because, although there is some evidence to support it, our examination of the evidence leaves us with the definite and firm conviction that a mistake has been committed. We hold that, as applied to a board game, the word Monopoly has become generic, and the registration of it as a trademark is no longer valid.
Damn.
We freaking won? Parker
started in 73. This is probably like mid-80s. Oh my god, this was just bullshit on top of bullshit.
Brothers has just lost not only the suit, not only all the money in attorney fees, but also their entire right to the Monopoly trademark altogether. And the worst part is, I can't even be happy about it because I just witnessed the biggest instance of ref ball I've ever seen in my life.
So much just so much contradiction, so much BS. This was a win for no one.
What the heck was that? My guy got into his judge chair and made a call so bogus, even the opposing team went, ooh, that's bad. Again, I am not a lawyer, so I could be missing something here, but it's gotta mean something that after reading and rereading these cases for hours, every time the district court explained their findings, I went, oh yeah, okay, I can see where they're coming from there. And every time the appeals court explained their stuff, I'm frozen from reading the dumbest sentence I've ever...
Yeah, pretty much that's how I feel. Makes sense. Appeal courts, hold my beer. Let me mess with your brain and everyone's time.
Ever seen in my life. Parker Brothers got hit by the biggest screw job I've seen in all my days.
Let's be clear. Fuck Parker Brothers. But yeah, this is pretty dumb.
And I'm just standing on the sidelines shouting, ref, please, throw the flag. My guy's getting murdered out there. But there will be no flag. There will never be a flag. The ref's already thinking about Cancun. I honestly believe that what happened is that the appeals court got so butthurt from the district court pointing out their garbage in the third case that they went, oh, you're taking shots at me? You're talking noise at me? You're shaking my bag of cats, little bro? Well, guess what? I'm revoking your decision. Parker Brothers, your trademark's no longer valid. Hee-haw. As a result of this win, Anti-Monopoly is now able to properly return to producing and selling their game. And as a hilarious bonus, Parker Brothers also needs to reimburse Ralph for every copy of the game they destroyed in that little celebratory extinction event that they hosted. Good! Remember, kids, never start showboating until the game is over. But that little mishap is far from the biggest problem Parker Brothers is worried about right now. You see, with no trademark on Monopoly, anyone is now able to make and sell their own version of the game, turning Monopoly into a chess-type title that will absolutely kill the company. So what do you do when you think the court has screwed you over? Why, you appeal, of course. And with no appeal courts left above this one, there is only one place left that this case can go.
Supreme Court.
Straight to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Tensions are high. This is the last chance for both parties, both with everything on the line. The highest court in the country about to hear the case for what could decide the future of trademark validity in America as a whole. Let's go now to the Supreme Court cam to see their first reaction. What is this? Board game crap? I don't have time for this. Just go with whatever the last guy said. They outright refused to hear the case.
I don't think a Supreme Court can do that. I believe they have to fairly listen to any case sent to them.
Parker Brothers has permanently lost. There is nothing they can do about it.
Okay, no, I need to know this. I need to know this.
How?
Does the Supreme Court have to take every case given to them? No, the Supreme Court above the U.S. and Canada does not have to take every case given to them. In fact, they denied the vast majority of petitions. Justices exercise. Okay, so this feels stupid.
Last guy. Parker, they can do about it.
The makers of the popular board game Monopoly today drew a chance card and lost, for real. They didn't go to jail, they didn't pass go, but lost their Monopoly on Monopoly.
Quite a few.
Never knew about this. I've never heard this at all.
Monopoly has lost its monopoly on Monopoly stories were printed that next week, and our beloved professor could finally rest easy knowing that his legal troubles were over. But quite a few people were concerned as to what this ruling meant for other trademarks across the US. Parker Brothers has maintained that such an interpretation of the law could have a devastating economic impact on companies. But Robin Rolfe, executive director of the United States Trademark Association, said it is still too early to see what the real impact will be. Perhaps it will have no impact. That would be our greatest hope. Now, you might be sitting there thinking that, wow, that guy was right. Generic monopolies haven't flooded the market, and companies still carry on like normal with their trademarks. What gives? Well, those execs across the nation were shaking and quaking in their boots for what this could do to their bottom line until they remembered their oldest and greatest tool that they could use to protect corporate interests. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another exciting round of Money in Politics!
Boo!
Every time. Recognizing that spending a ton of money now is better than losing all future money forever, Parker Brothers rounded up some of its corporate pals and began lobbying like there's no...
Do I have to explain why business lobbying has pretty much destroyed modern U.S. politics? And it's probably the core reason the U.S. is probably sinking into a depression it hasn't seen for over 100 years? No? Good. Moving on.
No tomorrow. And I kid you not, it took them the sum total of 8 months in order to get the Trademark Clarification Act of 1983 read by the Senate. Good. Glad that we can act clearly and quickly on the things that actually matter. It took approximately a year to get it through the congressional system, but it made it through there nonetheless. And with all of their hard work, the Lanham Act was amended in 1984, making it so a registered trademark has not become generic and therefore cancelable solely because such mark is...
So, to break this down, what this means is they lost in court. Look, it was stupid, but they lost in court. They had money. They overstepped the court system to the policy makers to pretty much say, nah, we create the rules, and the rule now is, fuck you. This has no connection to today at all.
Also used as a name of or to identify a unique product or service. Makes the primary significance of the mark to the relevant public rather than purchaser motivation the test for whether or not the mark has become generic. In short, it means that in order for the trademark to be lost, it would need to follow the same path as, say, air fryer, which was a trademarked product name until it became used to describe any type of these air frying devices. Other examples of names that used to be trademark include flip phone by Motorola, aspirin, which Bayer still has in some countries, and heroin?
What?
Somebody once had a trademark.
Someone trademarked heroin? Fuck, trademarking is stupid.
On heroin? Well, let's see. Name brand heroin is a lot better, but Great Value's hotshot juice is cheaper. This set of rules does make a lot more sense than whatever the heck that last judge was spouting off, but it is unfortunate that they got to this by bribing their way into it.
It's gross.
And as a result, Parker Brothers has officially regained control of the Monopoly trademark. Whew, that was a close one. But now that we got that taken care of, we should be able to keep this company up and running for quite some time. Now, this is not the end of the story, but it is the end of my collection of court documents and congressional announcements. So from here on out, we are going to be dealing with tons of contrasting reports and timeline gaps that make it pretty hard to pin down the truth. Heck, that documentary from earlier straight up said that Ralph appealed to the Supreme Court and they ruled in favor of him.
Lies.
Which, A, Ralph had already won at that point, and B, the Supreme Court never even heard the case. As a result, this section's gonna be a lot more hazy than the rest, but there is still
nothing worse than knockoff heroin.
a lot to unpack. First, with Monopoly now back in control of its own trademark, this once again opens the door to possible legal trouble with anti-monopoly. Hooray! But after everything they had already been through, both sides were kind of just like, do you want to go back in there? No. Do you? Heck no! And decided to settle out of court. The details
All it took was, what, 12 years?
Are a little fuzzy. Some say that anti-monopoly was excluded from the Monopoly trademark and could still sell the game without issue. Others say that Ralph sold the rights to them but kept the rights to his other game. All that we know for sure is that at some point between 1984 and 1991, Ralph would sell the rights to anti-monopoly to Parker Brothers, who then licensed the game back to him to be sold on the market. This little alliance would continue seamlessly and without issue all the way up until it didn't anymore. Shocker, I know. More on that later. Another interesting thing that happened during this time period was another little game released by the name of Gay Monopoly.
I do know about Gay Monopoly. I do know about Gay Monopoly. This is real.
Title that we've looked at prior that dropped in 1983 before getting atomized in a lawsuit by Parker Brothers. I found this timing interesting as how was Anti-Monopoly able to win their suit against Parker Brothers while Gay Monopoly got obliterated?
Yeah, Gay Monopoly has a circle. It's not even a square like normal Monopoly. Also, it's very gay.
And what I was able to come up with was that Gay Monopoly was under fire for a completely different reason: copyright infringement. See, anti-monopoly was in violation of the trademark. It used the word monopoly not to say that it was anti the board game, it was anti the general economic concept of a monopoly. That word just happened to be under trademark when used as the title of a board game. Gay Monopoly, meanwhile, is not referring to a homosexual company that controls the market and barriers to entry.
Okay, I gotta look this up.
Incoming ad break.
Is there a gay monopoly company? Is there a gay company? Yeah, gay group of companies. Huh. Go figure. More you learn.
It is referring to a homosexual version of the Parker Brothers board game. which was done without the permission of the company, which is why they got eviscerated in the lawsuit. This also adds another layer to the gay Monopoly lore, as when you look at the details of the game and the timing of its release, something really fishy starts to take shape. You see, the Monopoly trademark was
Oh, I just fucking realized it. The reason it came out in 1983 is because, if you remember, this was like the year after the court said that Monopoly doesn't own the right to the word monopoly. Oh my god.
finally found to be void in February of '83. This makes nationwide news, and everyone is quite shocked by this. Mysteriously, before the end of that same year, a title by the name of Gay Monopoly would release, claiming to be a celebration of gay life. Despite having quite a lot of effort poured into it, the game does contain errors in its trivia and effect cards, the scaling of its property prices, and in one case, an entire property not having a price at all, giving the impression that it was...
Key West is limitless. Hey, there's no limits on price when you're in Key West gay.
partially rushed. Additionally, despite containing many mechanics that separate it from the Parker Brothers game, it still chooses to use Monopoly in the title, which opens it up to the legal trouble that kills the game. Well, with all of this background information about what was happening to Monopoly at the time, I think I do now have an answer for all these questions. As I think that Gay Monopoly's main purpose was to allow Fire Island Games to capitalize off of Monopoly losing its trademark by releasing a game that would catch the attention of the public, not realizing that while Parker had lost the trademark, they still had the
I sadly don't have Gay Monopoly in my collection. Darn.
copyright. This series of events answers so many of those questions. Why did it release in this time period? Because Monopoly's trademark was removed. Why does it contain so many blatant errors? Because its rushed production meant that it couldn't do...
Look, I'm not gonna lie, I love that fucking gator. That gator is awesome.
Proper quality control. And the big one, why did they use Monopoly in the title knowing that Parker Brothers would absolutely seek legal action? Because they thought that they could get away with it now that the trademark was invalid. This makes the whole thing even worse because now we know for sure that if they would have changed the name, they would have been fine because Parker Brothers didn't even have a trademark at that point.
They should have just called it the game of gay life.
There was literally only one single way that they could have gotten into legal trouble, and they smacked that sucker into right field for Parker Brothers' easiest pop fly of their life. What Gay Monopoly did here was basically watch the patent for Claritin expire, put out a drug called Claritin 2, and then immediately get sent to the Shadow Realm for copyright infringement. Actively impressed that they managed to screw up the only point where they could have gotten away with this with no repercussions. All they had to do was walk in a straight line and they managed to trip, fall, and die.
How is
And that
everyone?
should bring to a close the complete saga and impact of anti-monopoly. At least, anti-monopoly 1. You heard that right, folks. It's anti-monopoly.
Oh my god, this dumb motherfucker.
Monopoly 2, complete with its own entirely separate game, entirely separate issues, and entirely separate lawsuit against everyone's favorite board game buddy, the Hasbro Corporation. However, that will need to be a story for the next video to tell, as unless I split this up, there will be no uploads for over a month, and I will be the next one declaring bankruptcy. So until I see you there, keep in mind the Parker Brothers, and always remember to never put yourself in a situation where one bad call can lose you the game. Signing off for Remembering to Tip Your Senator, I am Cam Sandwich. Thank you for...
Okay, so everyone sucks. I'm just gonna say it. Everyone sucks in this. The lawyer was shady as fuck. Parker Brothers is shady as fuck for just lobbying to the courts. Gay Monopoly exists, but this was fun. Hey, thanks for checking out this video. Check me out on Twitch, SilverDFanng, 2 N's in Fang. Check me out on Twitter and Blue Sky under the same name. Also TikTok. Have a great night.